1, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 16 of The Whistleblower, and they said it would never last. My name is Ian Trent, and joining me is our intrepid panel of water polo personalities. First up, the former Australian Olympic representative and men's coach, player and coach he was. Good evening in Canberra to John Fox. It's chilly there, Foxy.
It is a little bit chilly, Ian, and good evening, welcome, and good to be on. This is our last episode before Christmas, is it?
Look, I haven't been told. I haven't been told by the chief, but I don't know.
Oh, well, we'll see.
We'll see. That's overly professional, isn't it? And as usual, Australia's most credentialed referee coming to us from Melbourne, where they are free.
Mask free. Good evening, everyone. Yes, we are certainly mask free. Don't need to wear them anymore, but we do need to wear them. Very strange, but yes, how it works in Victoria. Always good.
They like us to wear them, even in Sydney.
Yep.
Sydney. Look, he's normally in the nation's capital, but tonight he's coming to us from the wilds of Tasmania. The former Athena referee and ex-general manager of the Australian Water Polo League, Noel Howard. Good evening, Noel.
Hey mate, how are you? I'm in south of Kettering on the coast, just south of Hobart at the moment, and it's pretty cold. But I like the moustaches. That's better than I could have ever grown. So yeah,
that's true. That is true. Possibly not better than mine. Anyhow, that's our panel for this evening. Our guest coming up shortly is Richard Mcginnis, the CEO of Australian Water Polo. But in the meantime, if you'd like to ask Richard, or in fact any of the panel a question, particularly during the upcoming referee segment, look at that little Q&A box right down the bottom of your screen. Get your mouse there and click it down to the bottom where it says Q&A. There's a box there. Press it and you'll be able to ask a question. And we promise we'll get it on air for you. No problem at all. We see that little Q&A thing down the bottom there. And if you have a look at all of our other social media outlets there, they're all there. They're in front of you right now. I'm not going to go through them again. But if you'd like to write a note to Phil, the Führer, and say if you like the show or don't like the show, please do. We welcome any sort of criticism or comment that you'd like to give us. Okay. A little bit of news, gentlemen. We have some really good news today about Paul Oberman getting a new job in Singapore. Danny, that was great news, wasn't it?
It was absolutely fantastic news for him. For a person that has water polo at heart, the whole family, Oberman family's got water polo at heart, and for him to take up a tenure for 2 years in Singapore, absolutely fantastic for him.
And it's a good place too.
Yep.
Really good place, and the water polo setup there. I don't know if any of you have been there to that setup they've got in Singapore.
Yep.
Apparently, it's fantastic.
Yeah, we had a competition there a few years ago. I think Foxy, were you the coach then?
We
Croatia
actually, before the Beijing Olympics, we did a pre-Olympic tournament, which Obi was very highly part of that organisational group. So. Yeah, it is a fantastic setup. They've got quite a number of pools, and it's as Obi said, it's back to the future for him. He's going back where it all started.
Yeah, it's interesting because he, as you know, he coached there for some years, and it's also a very interesting time for Singapore because Tanan Bok died a week ago, who was Mr. Water Polo in Singapore for a long time and a great friend of Australia. So Paul's going to an area where he's been before, and I'm sure he can make it good again like he did last time.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if you're in Singapore, I'm sure that Paul would appreciate a call, and maybe he could even get to sleep on his floor. Who knows? Okay, question and answer time for all you referees. Don't forget your Q&A box if you want to ask the boys any sort of refereeing question. Danny, what have we got today? We've got 3 good ones.
Yep, hopefully 3 good ones, and once again some interesting ones in there. So, okay, here we go. We'll start off with the first one. Once again, I'll just read it out. During the game, player 4 shoots the ball, which bounces off the goalpost and back into the field of play, and it's floating freely, so no team's in possession of the ball. Before either team gains possession of the ball, blue player number 5 intentionally injures white player 6, kicking him in the face and acting with malice intent. Immediately following this incident, player 6 retaliates, hitting player 5 with a clenched fist. What should the referee do? So what happens? What we're saying is that the blue team's had a shot. It's bounced off the post. It's fallen into neutral territory, and 2 players have started fighting. So what the referee does is he rolls both players for the game with substitution after 4 minutes, and penalties are awarded to each team. Okay, so because the ball's in neutral territory, so no one's in possession of the ball. So how do we decide who shoots first or who shoots second? Okay, so what we do is it's the team that was last in possession of the ball. So it was the blue team that had the shot. So they shoot first to their penalty. White team shoots their penalty. And then, this is the strange thing, then it goes to a neutral ball because no one was actually in possession of the ball when the incident happened. So blue team were last in possession of the ball. They shoot penalty first. White shoot penalty. And then we go for a neutral ball.
Well, I'll tell you what, Danny, people would say that's never going to happen. I can tell you, go and referee schoolboy water polo and it'll happen.
Yep.
A really good chance.
All these strange things do happen. That's the thing, Minnie. And you're right, schoolboys, it's where it's going to happen.
Definitely. Any other comments?
Many
Yeah, Victorian water polo as well.
Of the whole of Victorian water polo. Sorry about that, guys.
So guys, many years ago, Gianni Lonzi came to Australia and he was doing a clinic, and he came to watch the National League finals, and he came to watch the semi-final, and Michael McNeil and Andrew Carney were refereeing the game, and that happened. That actually happened, and they got it right.
Strange things that happen. Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, we'll go to the next one.
Oh, Danny, just before you move on, and obviously both teams play a player down for 4 minutes.
4 minutes, yeah. So that's the players are rolled for the game with substitution after 4 minutes. Penalties awarded to either team. Okay, then we go back to the normal scenarios after that. Yep. Thanks, Boxy.
Yep.
Okay, Scotty. Okay, next. During the game, blue team player 8 on his own initiative leaves the field of play in a place other than the re-entry substitution areas mentioned in the rules. What should the referees do? Okay, what we're saying here is that during the game, a player swims out the side of the pool or swims behind the goals and goes around back into his re-entry box. What's the referee do? Okay, because that player has left the field of play not through the re-entry box, he can't come back into play unless there's a goal scored, been a timeout called by either team, or the end of the period, or when the referee says he's deemed to come back in. So, and this is all because he didn't go out through the re-entry box. That's the big thing. He just went out. He might have went through the flying substitution and went down and went back around and come back into the entry box. So he can't come back in because he didn't leave in the correct manner or the correct way. So he can't come back in until there's a goal scored, timeout, or a change of the end of the period.
Okay. Now, that did happen at Sutherland Pool in a National League game last year.
And this also happens in a lot of junior games as well. Players just swim out and not really what they're doing and wonder why they can't come back in. That's why, because they didn't go out in the correct manner. Okay.
Excellent. Any other comments?
Oh, I think that's very true, Danny. Under 12s, 14s and 16s is where all these things always happen.
Yep.
And that's why it's really good for referees, including senior referees, to referee those games, because that's where you see everything. That's where you learn the rules properly. So.
Got a question from Fiona. Can his teammate come in before he or she gets there?
No one can come in until there's a goal scored because the player didn't leave the pool through the re-entry box. And that's the whole thing. So.
Okay. All right, we're done with that one. We're going on to number 3.
Scotty, okay. Okay, in attack, an ordinary foul is called in favour of the blue team inside the 6 metre area. Blue player 5 takes the free throw and white player 2 tries to block the pass in the correct manner. And by deflection, the ball enters the goal. Own goal. What is the correct decision? Okay, so a lot of people say because the foul is inside 6 metres and the guy went to pass and it got blocked and it went into goals, it can't be a goal because they're not outside 6 metres where the foul may have been. Makes no difference. Doesn't matter where the foul is. If the defending player blocks the ball legally or in the correct manner and it deflects into the goal, it's a goal. So, but you know, they're talking about a foul outside 6 metres and have a shot. It doesn't matter because it's come off a defender. Even though the guy was trying to pass the ball and not trying to shoot goal, the defender defended it in the correct manner, but it deflected, went into the goal. It's a goal. Hope that makes sense.
Okay, could you in desperation shoot the ball and hope for a deflection and it comes off?
No.
The correct manner is the key words.
Yeah, because we're talking about here is that it's a pass. The attacking player was doing a pass. He wasn't having a shot. And if it deflects off a pass, well, then it's got to be a goal. If the referee deems, as you just asked, Minnie, that the guy was having a shot, hopefully gets a deflection, then it's a turnover straight away anyway, because he's shooting from a foul inside 6 metres. So they differentiate very, very easily. So, but it's all about the wording of the attacking players passing the ball, and it got deflected by the defender and went into goals. So.
Okay. Any other comments, gentlemen?
Clear?
No, they're stony-faced. They are stony-faced. Well, thank you for that, Danny.
No worries at all.
Always find your question and answer segment very edifying and interesting. Okay, our special guest now joins us. He is the new, he's not new anymore, but he hasn't been around for that long. He's the CEO of Australian Water Polo. Welcome, Richard McInnes from Brisbane.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks, crew.
Well, thanks for joining us. Now, we want to look into a bit of the Richard McInnes personal story, right? It all began for you, I believe, in rural central Queensland, was it?
Not quite central Queensland, but yeah, southeast country Queensland, I suppose. A little place called Kingaroy. You might, Joe Bjelke-Petersen, the Queensland Premier, that was Joe's hometown. We've got an amazing airport for a little town of 10,000 people.
And do you like peanuts?
I love peanuts, yes. Grew up on peanuts. So, yeah, little country town, born and bred there, and yeah, went to state school there and state high school, and played pretty much every sport available to me, which water polo wasn't one of them. There was no water polo in Kingaroy.
As you do in a country town, I'll just butt in for another one, Richard. So how do you progress into sports administration from going to school in Kingaroy?
Yeah, well, finished school, got offered a sports scholarship to university and knocked it back and went to become an electrician. So I'm an electrician by trade. Did that for 4 years, did my apprenticeship. I was a keen cricketer and rugby league player and touch footy and a few other things. And I was always coaching though, and had this interest in coaching, and finished my apprenticeship, put myself through university, did a sports science degree, worked in Brisbane as an electrician for a while and went through university, and was still playing cricket and coaching at that point. And sort of evolved to, that turned into a coaching career that lasted the next 20 years at all sorts of levels. And that coaching then evolved into high performance management across a couple of different countries and a couple of different sports. And as then sort of the next step from that was into a CEO role, I suppose. So, yeah, here I am now.
So, Richard, clearly going to a sport that you haven't played, that sport is a difficult thing. You've done it before. I've done it myself a couple of times, doing it at the moment. Can we sort of discuss what do you think is the attributes you need to be able to do that? Because clearly when you go to a sport you haven't played, there's experts everywhere who all think they know how to do the job. Most don't, of course, but they like to think they do. Why don't you sort of share with us some of the skills that are needed? Because it's not easy.
I think what you just said there is right. There's a lot of experts and they all think they know what they're doing, and they're all right because they are the experts in the sport. And, you know, we could have a conversation here, and you guys probably do have conversations on the show about, you know, if I asked all of you who's the best centre forward in the world right now, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 different responses, maybe.
Joe Case.
Joe Case. Hopefully it's Joe, but, you know, but there might be, you know, on any given day, there might be another couple of players that are there and thereabouts, and you guys could debate about it, and, you know, who's right, who's wrong, no one's to say. And that's the thing with sport. It's very rarely black and white, and is there one correct answer? There's always. And so I would see, you know, my job when you do move across sports is, you know, if there's 6 of you in the room and you're all water polo experts, me being a 7th water polo expert doesn't really make any difference. My job is to try and get collectively the best out of the 6 of you, because you're the experts. And if I can get the best out of you, then we come up with probably a better solution that's, you know, by the power of 6 rather than your view versus someone else's view versus my view. And occasionally you'll get, you know, someone, we're very fortunate at the moment. We've got Charlie's come back in to the sport. Now, he's a bit of a unicorn because he's got extensive administrative experience and leadership experience, but he's also reasonably well qualified as a water polo player and coach. So he's a bit of a unicorn, though. There's not many of those people floating around that have got extensive experience as administrators and elite athletes. And you can take that across as many sports as you like. You know, I'm pretty sure most of the AFL CEOs aren't 200-game players, neither are the NRL CEOs. You know, and even if you look even to coaching ranks these days around the world, most of the most successful coaches haven't been the greatest players. Most of them are school teachers who played, they were students of the game and they became good coaches. Foxy as an example, of course. Not
a good player?
Yeah, no, good player too.
Well, look, it's very true. Danny was a very average player who became a great referee. So there you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, that's a good point. I think that, and I said earlier offline, you know, the further you move away from the game day coaching, the less important having played the sport is. The closer you are to that game day environment, I think it's more important. And I'm watching at the moment Lisa Alexander, who is Lisa's a friend of mine. Netball days, Lisa's trying to coach in the AFL. And look, I think that'd be tough. I had this conversation with Charlie and Elvis the other day. Like I've coached for 20 odd years, and I don't think I could go. I couldn't coach water polo. I spent 4 years around netball. I don't think I could go and coach a netball team. I don't. I could add value in different ways, but I don't think I could coach a netball team because I haven't played the game. I don't understand it.
Richard, let's just on your coaching background. You've done quite a number of different coaching roles. What's probably been your most challenging?
The inter-cricket program that I ran for it's like the flipper ball program. I was the national women's coach, and I was also trying to set up a new club here where I live for the 6-year-olds. No, so that was challenging. But no, look, it's a good question, Foxy. I think I've been really lucky in that I've had a lot of diversity in who I've coached and where I've coached. I went, I coached the assistant coach of the Aussie men's team. That was, in some ways, that's the easiest job in the world. You got,
that was cricket.
Yeah, cricket. So, McGrath and Warren and Ponting and Hayden and whatever. Not a lot. I'm telling them they don't have to tell them much what to do. But there's other challenges with coaching guys like that. Then, coached the national women's team. I coached state women's teams as well. That was a different challenge because I viewed the world through a male lens and a male upbringing and a male background, and they view the world through a female lens in cricket, and that's different to my perspective. So it probably took me 12 months to get my head around that and understand how to do that well. And then I went from, I was a senior coach of the Cricket Academy in Adelaide in 2003, and probably arguably the most sophisticated cricket academy in the world at the time. And I went from there to Bangladesh, to a country where I didn't speak the language, didn't know the culture. They had no technology, they had nothing, and built a high performance program over there from zero. They didn't have one essentially when I got there, and built that into without blowing my own trumpet, a really successful program. And the greatest players Bangladesh have produced are the players that were in that program. So all of their superstars, including the number one player in the world, number one all-rounder in the world, Saqib Al Hassan, came out of that program. And so that's probably, of all the things I've done, that's probably what I'm most proud of. That one is, the top 4 or 5 players that country have ever produced were in that program for 2 years, under 19s.
Okay, Richard.
That's very special, because they're the sort of things that people don't notice. They notice when you produce somebody straight away, but when you set a program up and somebody later comes along and they achieve something, that's pretty special. That's well done.
Yeah, excellent. Now, Richard, you'd be pretty happy with the way women's cricket, I know we're talking water polo, but we're talking about you in particular as well. Women's cricket, it's, we're watching it nearly every day now. And what are some of the names that you coached? Are they sitting there in the commentary box now?
No, they're still playing. So,
okay.
So I came into that program. Yeah, well, a couple are in the commentary box. So Lisa Stalaker's commentating. Isha Gua, who you see I coached against, Isha. But so I was with that team from 08 to 12, and sort of brought in, Perry, Lanning, Jonathan, Cummins, well, most of those players, and then the young girls that are in that team now were the kids that I was looking at as 15-year-olds as the national high performance manager and talent manager. So, look, really proud of where they've got to, and they've done a phenomenal job. Interestingly, it sort of relates to some of the water polo stuff, the situation we're in at the moment. We made a strategic decision at Cricket Australia. So I was sort of involved. I was working at Cricket Australia when the Big Bash kicked off, and back in 2010, we had a big sort of war room discussion, I suppose, with all the members and the states and all the staff about, this is pre-Big Bash, about what we were going to do with, some of the issues the sport was facing, and Big Bash came out of that. And we made a strategic decision with women's cricket at the time that, because in women's cricket, there was still test cricket and there was 50-over cricket, and 2020 was just, it was really just starting. It was only new on the global landscape. And we made a strategic decision back in probably around 2009, maybe, that if women's cricket was going to move the dial, it was going to be through T20 cricket, not through one-day or test cricket. Okay? Even though all the traditionalists were, and the girls, the women, loved test cricket because that was seen at the time as the pinnacle of the sport, and in men's cricket it probably still is. But we made a strategic decision that if the game was going to grow and if it was going to get on TV, it was going to be T20 cricket, not one-day cricket or test cricket. And to watch the final back in March with 80,000 people at the MCG and how many million watching it on TV, I go, wow, that's 10 years later. 10 years almost probably to the day of going, so we're going to back that horse. We're going to go down that path. And what it meant was that everything underneath that changed. So all of the development systems, all the junior competitions, all the junior pathway stuff focused on T20 cricket and producing players to play T20 cricket, not to play test cricket. And I think it's a good example of, sometimes you've got to bite the bullet and make some tough calls that aren't always popular, but, trying to look forward. It doesn't always work, obviously, but was a big decision. So, really proud of where that group have got to. Was lucky enough to coach them. We won the World Cup in the West Indies, which was the first one they won for a while, and they went on to win the next 3. And with that group of players, it was, some exciting young players.
So, Richard, you said earlier that you male cricket, coaching cricket men, and you went across to the women, and it took you 12 months to change your way of thinking to to adapt to the women's way. Male or female, one harder to coach than the other? You treat them the same way? I know you said you changed your way, but do you treat them the same way and coach them the same way?
Different ways, Danny, I think. They are different, and in some elements you treat them the same, but in other elements you have to treat them differently as a coach, you treat everyone individually too. I mean, there are some guys that you treat a certain way, other guys you don't, and same with the women. But look, in terms of what I used to always say is there are subtle but significant differences between coaching men and women. And the best summary that I've always used is when the guys are playing well, they're happy. When the girls are happy, they're playing well.
Which one did you enjoy more? Can you say that?
No, it's like who's your favourite kid, you know?
Absolutely.
Neither. I really enjoyed working with both. We had some really tough times. We had some really challenging times. I was more challenged coaching the women. So I felt like I could have more influence because I was in a different role. I was head coach too, not assistant coach. So that changes it. I was more challenged and it was tougher. But like with anything, I think if it's hard work and you get results, that's can be more satisfying. With the men's team, and I was blessed. I was really lucky that I came into the men's team at a time where they just lost the Ashes in 2005. I got a tap on the shoulder basically to say, we want you to come and do this role with the team. And they were so motivated on the back of that Ashes loss that I could have been a bloody lamppost. It wouldn't have really mattered. They were going to win anyway. And we went on over the next 3 years. We won Champions Trophy for the first time, got the Ashes back, won the World Cup in the West Indies and smashed everyone. I think for John Buchanan was a coach at the time, and the rest of us as support staff, it was almost just stay out of the road. It was such a good side and such a good group of people. It was, our job was do no harm. Just don't get in the road.
Yep. Be seen and not heard.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Richard, who would you say have been the biggest influences on your career or coaching area?
Yeah.
At this stage?
Lots of people. Look, John Buchanan's been a big influence for me. Like I've known John. I volunteered for John when he was coaching Queensland back in the mid-90s. So I've known John a long time and he's been really good to me. Bennett King, who was the head of the QAS for a long time. But then people like Rick Charlesworth, I admired Rick from a distance for a long time and then was fortunate enough to spend a bit of time with Rick at different times. Rod McQueen, even as a Wallabies coach, I really liked the work he did back when he was the Wallabies coach. I like what Adam does in the US at the moment. I think he does a great job in the conversations I've had with him, and I've been really impressed with the way he thinks about things. Look, I've been lucky. I've been in environments, and Noel knows, and Foxy knows as well. When you're an AIS coach, you just get exposed to so many. Like the trip that Foxy and I did through South America and North America, just sitting down, John Uriarty and Coach K at Duke University, just sitting down talking to those guys, you just get exposed to a lot of different people. And I don't think there's anyone, Ian, that I just say, yeah, look, I've just copied this person. I've sort of taken bits and pieces and, listened to a lot of people and observed a lot of people and try and apply the right tools to the right job at the right time. And don't always get it right, but I try.
I think what was invaluable about that tour that we did, which was in 2011, the year before the Olympics, was that not only did we get to meet people from overseas and in various sports, but the group that we had as well. And it was run by Pat Hunt, who was basketball, and then yourself, and we had Mickey O'Loughlin. Yeah. We had a range of different people from different sports, and just to share that knowledge and bounce ideas off each other for 3 weeks was fantastic.
Yeah. I think the one thing that you learn in all those conversations is there's more similarities than differences, in relation to the challenges and the difficulties. And, Ian, your opening question sort of all about, moving between sports. Like when you're moving between sports, there's far more similarities than there are differences, particularly in team sports and in federated structures that are similar structures and similar setups. There's technical differences about the game, but most of the other issues are pretty common. The sports are different, absolutely, but the issues, the personality types, I used to joke with people that if you, at a board level, an administrative level, the personality profiles are the same. When I went to Bangladesh, if you were doing personality profile where you're putting people in boxes, it's the same profile in Bangladesh as it is the Cricket Australia board, you know, the types of personalities are the same, the agendas and the motivations are the same.
Okay, so
So Richard, oh, sorry, Ian.
that's all right. I didn't know you were going to talk.
I thought I was looking at the queuing. I thought it was me. Sorry.
Foxy interrupted. That's okay. Aren't we a professional group? What about, Richard, what about in administration? Like, who are some of the people you admire in admin? Because now that's what you're in. Your coaching's a little further away now.
Yep, correct. Yeah. So in terms of administration, look, I was really lucky to work for Belinda Clark for the best part of 7 years, I suppose, and Belinda's phenomenal. I can't speak highly enough of her and how she goes about things. I was really, stick with the Clarks, but Catherine Clark was CEO of Netball Queensland, still is. Worked for Catherine for 4 years. She was really impressive. Essentially worked for James Sutherland for 7 years, and I sort of still keep in touch with James. He's really impressive. They're probably some of the ones from an administrative perspective. But again, there's a lot of people that I don't know, have come across in time that I, have a coffee with or observe what they're doing and read about and listen to them. And, I'm a bit of an avid LinkedIn sort of stalker, I suppose. I just follow there's some good content, try and learn from. One of my challenges is to I probably read too many things and you get too many ideas in your head. Sometimes you just got to slow down a bit and don't confuse yourself.
So Richard, I've moved to earphones because the wind's quite strong here, so I hope you can still hear me. Before I move to the question, I want to talk about referees. I want to ask you a question about cricket. Who's the best cricketer you've seen live? Being at the ground, who?
Jeez, again, who's your favorite?
If you want to separate male and female, that's good. And if you don't want to answer, that's okay.
Oh, geez, that's a tough one. Look, I was a massive fan of Ricky Pondings. I really admire Ricky and a lot of things about him. But equally, that's tough. Equally, I was Gilly's pretty impressive. Glenn McGrath, Warney wasn't bad either. So, and then you come up with Sachin. There's some pretty impressive people. Meg Lanning, Lise Perry, I think, are probably the standouts in the women's game. But certainly, the men's one very hard. For an all round, I'll probably say Gilly. Just quality of person, quality of player. But geez, it's a photo finish with him and Huss and McGrath and Ponting.
A few different egos in that group too, I'd say.
It was probably one of the reasons, Danny, why that team was so successful is that they weren't too many. They were.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, look, there are certainly some healthy egos because I don't think you're ever successful at that level without a decent dose of confidence in your own ability. But people underestimate the quality of the people in that team, not just the quality of the players, but the quality of the people in that group was part of the reason they were so successful.
Yeah. The reason I asked you that was before I came to Tasmania last week, I went to watch the third one-day international in Canberra. I went to see Smith and Coley. Smith wasn't so good.
No.
Very unusually. Coley was still pretty good, of course, but they're just icons. And to sit on the ground with his, 75% Indian supporters is an amazing. It's like going to an English football game. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, you should try doing that in India, where it's
I can imagine
100% Indians. Good fun.
So I wanted to go back and talk before we go back to referees. Talk about administration. What it's like to come into water polo and work in administration there. As you know, I was bored, worked in administration, moved on to another sport again.
Yeah.
How do you find it in there at the moment? Do you find it bad, different, whatever?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say it's bad. Look, it's very similar to a lot of other sports. We're in a federated model. You've got state members and club members. It's very, very similar to what I started with at netball. Very similar in 2015. Netball Queensland, almost a mirror image when I started with water polo. Look, I think we're making some progress. Look, we'd love to have more staff. There's so many things we'd love to be able to do, but you know, we can only do so much, and we've got to try and prioritise things. I'm pretty happy now. We've been able to get the national strategy out, and there's a few things sort of will roll out from that over the next few weeks. That will help us because we've got some real clarity that's now out in the open and public, and that'll allow us to sort of move forward. You know, hopefully travel restrictions are lifting, and hopefully they stay up. That will allow us to get back in front of people and start to get things rolling. It's been difficult not being able to run competitions at a national level anyway, and some of the limitations there. So, yeah, look, to answer your question, Noel, it's there are challenges to it, but there's challenges to every sporting admin role, as you know, and we're just trying to navigate our way through that. And I think some of our biggest challenges are things that aren't necessarily public yet, things that, you know, from a Sport Australia, not so much Sport Australia, but from an AIS perspective, you know, where things are heading that isn't necessarily public, but we have to prepare for that. And we get some tough years ahead of us. So that's just the reality, and we're trying to set ourselves up to get through that, but it's not going to be easy.
Richard, can I?
So before Danny, let me finish. Supplementary question. All right.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, no, you're good. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Supplementary question. So, Richard, I know it's like it's been a pistol this year with COVID. It's been very difficult. You go out and see people. You can't turn up to nationals. There's nothing happening. It's been quite difficult. Everything's on Zoom. How's it been at water polo?
Yeah, pretty similar. We've done a lot of stuff on Zoom. One of the things that the staff have sort of said is that they've been more connected than what they are normally, because you know, for the best part of the year, we only stopped doing this about a month ago. We were doing an afternoon catch up 4 days a week with all the staff. Just check in, how things going.
Yeah.
You know, we got a big Groundhog Day there after a while, but we've now dropped that back to sort of a fortnightly meeting because we're now starting to move and we can get together. And but certainly the connection with our coaches and the rest of our staff is much stronger than it was, because often they wouldn't be in the office, they wouldn't connect with some of the staff. So that's been good. You know, it's what you make it. I think largely we were able to retain all staff, which is good. Well, you know, we were able to get some projects done that we might not have been able to get done otherwise. And we've sort of done a lot of planning and thinking through that time. And now hopefully we can roll some stuff out once we can get moving again.
And have you found that it's something I've found with our state presidents, that we've actually become a bit closer, yet we're not actually seeing each other, because we're actually talking to each other more often. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like with the national, so we've got a group now called the National Executive Group, which is all the state execs. So we meet every fortnight. We've been doing that for probably 6 months, 7 months. So we're essentially the senior management team for the sport in Australia, and we meet every 2 weeks, a couple of hours, and just talk about what's happening. There's ideas sharing between states, between us and the states, and vice versa, and that's working really well, because I think it's really easy to get isolated in a state exec role and my role, and so I think that's worked really well.
Richard,
that's one of the very few benefits of COVID.
Yeah, sorry, Foxy.
Richard, just picking up on what you said, if we could have more staff to do roles, would you be able to expand on what maybe those staff could be used for, and what would be their roles in improving the sport?
Yeah, look, where do you want me to start, Foxy? Look, I think there's a massive need for more work in our coach and referee education space. So, you know, for me, the player's experience is governed by the quality of the coaching and the quality of the refereeing. And if I dig into that a bit deeper, the majority of issues we deal with in sport come through competitions, and it's usually related to coaching and refereeing. And that's not a criticism of referees, it's parents and players and coaches, and everyone's involved. But if we can improve that part of our sport, and every sport would want to do the same, if we can improve that part, then you reduce a lot of the angst and the issues that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So if I had unlimited resources, I'd be, having a coach and referee education person or development person in every state that we were working with. So they're doing face-to-face. We'd have someone probably centrally, developing content and material and, managing online stuff, but then have people on the ground in every state delivering face-to-face programs, in services, to anyone and everyone that wanted to be involved.
Would
So
that be, is that, so you mentioned water polo is in a very similar state to what netball was 5 years ago, was it?
Yeah. Yep.
And so what you're describing there, is that what netball have done? Because they're in a much better position now.
Well, that was at Netball Queensland I was talking about. But yeah, there are other issues. What I was referring to there was more the level of distrust and issues within the membership base and wanting to toss the board out and all that sort of stuff. Netball have certainly done a lot of work in coach ed, but there's still more they could do there. I think every sport would say they'd love to do more in coach development in that space. So no, that's not the specific issue I was relating to, but yeah, that's probably the big one. And I think, we more broadly, our role, we've sort of redefined our role. Water Polo Australia's role in our structure is to support and empower our members, right? So anything that we could do to help our states to then help the clubs, I think would be a good thing, whether that's in marketing, whether it's commercial, whether it's, anything we can do to help our states help the clubs and make a better experience for the kids playing the game. That's what I'd be looking at. That's what we are looking at, with a limited budget.
Minnie, you're on silent. Minnie, you're on mute.
Sounded like a really good question too.
Looks like
He can't get his glass. Your glasses fogged up, mate.
Yeah, they have. I'll lift them up. There's another pro joke. Sorry, mate. Can I just go like that to you? Now you can go. There we go. I've waited a few years
deserve that.
Yeah, you did deserve it. Okay. Now I've forgotten the question I was going to ask. Thanks very much.
Just like any good coach.
Fantastic. Now, I do have a question from our viewers.
Yep.
And we just touched on the referees. It is, and it's anonymous. It's not
Anonymous.
What is Water Polo Australia doing to promote the development of referees?
Yeah.
So you've obviously got plans.
Well, we're working on some plans, yeah. So right at the moment, I'm working on trying to put together a role which will be a GM of learning and development, and that person's role will be to work on the coach and referee development structure. So we've obviously got some things in place at the moment that were brought in a couple of years ago. Now, I'm aware that hasn't rolled out probably as smoothly as intended, but there's some parts of that we can use. What we'd like to set up moving forward is that we create a framework, and I use the word framework all the time, but we create this framework that provides affordable access to information for people that want it all the time. And it's a combination of some online stuff, but then a network of people delivering face-to-face content. So trying to engage people like yourselves in your local areas to be able to then run face-to-face programs once a month that we're paying you to do on a daily rate to deliver a face-to-face session for, whether it's referees, whether it's coaches. But then we've also got this model of information being available for people to go and learn. So this is a work in progress. So, I'm sharing this as an idea rather than something that's locked in stone, but I fundamentally don't necessarily like the accreditation model. I don't like the idea that knowledge and information is hidden behind a paywall, that you pay $500 to go and do a course and then you get access to a bit of knowledge and then you don't do anything for the next 5 years until you pay $500 again to get the next bit. I'd rather see us have something that maybe, we pay $50 every year and you've got access to all the information and access to all the face-to-face forums that are on that year. And so if you're a keen learner, and we want it to promote continuous learning, because the best coaches, the best referees, the best players are the ones that are continually trying to get better. So how do we make that easier for people? And if you're an aspiring coach of any age or whatever, and you want to learn all about, I don't know, centre forward, you want to be a specialist centre forward coach, well, we have to make sure that we've got a heap of content that helps you with that. Or if you want to learn about skill acquisition in small-sided games, then we have content. You can go and learn as much as you like about that.
Good, so Richard. It's more about hands-on, isn't it? Honestly, coaching and refereeing. It's more. The more we get out there, and more we do the refereeing or the coaching, we're going to learn more. Not by sitting behind a computer and typing our answers on a.
Correct. And what's the adult learning principles? It's 70, 20, 10. 10% is sort of learnt in formal courses and online material. 20% is learnt sort of through conversations, and 70% is learnt through doing it. So Richard, model we've got to adopt.
So Richard, going on from what Danny said, I'm sure Danny would agree with me from a refereeing point of view, but I'm sure from a coaching point of view, from your point of view as well, mentoring is probably the most significant part of all that. Absolutely. That's where you learn when you've had a bad game, how do you react? How do you, you can't succeed unless you fail. That's a fact of life, and it's how you treat those failures is how you actually get there. I mean, we had Boris Margetta on a few weeks ago, and Boris spoke about how he failed in London, yet he was the best referee in the world.
Yeah.
He went home, he recovered, he learned from it, he thought about quitting, he spoke to his mentors, and he grew.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something we do very well in water polo. We talk about it and we do informally do it, but it's something we don't do very well. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I'm a massive fan of the mentoring program, but I don't think it has to be all that formal.
No, I agree.
Netball has a really regimented, formalized mentoring structure, and I don't think it works. I think you want to have mentors, but I don't think you can it can't be overly formal. It's got to be quite organic, but prompting that reflection and learning, and just have a discussion over a beer or coffee or whatever about, shit, I stuffed up today. This is what I thought I saw. This is what I was thinking. This is what and then it impacted me for the rest of the game. So what do you learn out of that? How do you deal with it next time it happens? All that sort of stuff. So, look, I agree, Danny. I think that, the practical, the doing, most athletes learn by doing. And most people that then coach and referee were athletes, and so it's no surprise that we learn best by doing, and surrounding ourselves with other people that are doing similar things and being willing to share those things.
So Richard, we're talking about doing things, and I'll put my referee's hat on now. And a lot of times from Water Polo Australia, we've been told that referees can't travel because there's not enough money and the money's gone somewhere else. So how do you do now in your administration to help out the referees to get us to travel to referee different competitions?
Yeah, good question. I've been chatting to Fiona about this today, funnily enough. So we, look, it's a bit the same with our coaches. We need to, we need to recognise and look after the coaches and referees that support our national age group programs, and it's in the national strategy about how do we, pay the national age group coaches to be part of it. We pay the physios to go away. Why aren't we paying the coaches? But at the same time, we're trying to make those national age group programs more affordable, so we don't want to charge the players to do that. So we've got to find some other money from somewhere, which is, ultimately that's always the challenge for us. And at the end of the day, there's a bucket of money. We're trying to grow that bucket of money, absolutely, and we're trying to do more things in that space. To grow revenue, so we can do more of those things. But there's no really easy answer to it, Danny. We want, even the AWL, obviously that might be a different format next year, but going forward, and I've been talking to Phil about this, we want the referees to travel. We want them to not referee in their home place all the time. So we'll be doing that. You might referee half the games, well, you won't because there's not a team in Melbourne, but Nicola will do half the games in Brisbane and she'll do half the games away from Brisbane. Fiona the same from Perth and the same for the refs in Sydney. So that's the intent to do that. And you know, the AWL is an interesting one because, you know, largely, well, historically, the clubs pay the license fee. So the more the competition costs, the more the clubs pay. So there's always that tension to keep the costs reasonable.
Of course.
You know, the model that I'm taking and that we'll be applying this year and going forward is that whatever the license fee is for a club, Water Polo Australia's contribution is double. All right. So if the costs go up, our costs go up. If the costs come down, our costs come down as well. So we're linked tightly to it.
Okay, that's good because we're recording all this, so we can keep you to that.
No, that budget's all the clubs have got that budget. They can see that very clearly.
I think what's really important here, and Danny and myself don't always agree on these things, so let's call it for what it is. I think those referees also have to put in. I think they've got to be like athletes who learn to do it. So in the old days, we used to pay our own way, but I know Don Cameron, Andrew Carney, Renee Bowl, myself used to drive up and down the road to Sydney all the time. You know, make sure you win the game. So it's one thing to say, Water Polo Australia needs to fly us around, we need to do this. Those people have to get out and do those games. And you know, Danny, they've got to do 12s, 14s, 16s, they've got to do training games, they've got to do all that sort of stuff because that's actually where you become an Olympic referee. Not at the top. You actually learn at that level where you're an Olympic referee. And I think we sometimes ask, and they deserve it. The referees deserve it, there's no doubt. But sometimes we ask a little bit too much. They need to put in like athletes do, like coaches do, like everything. And I think, you know, some of ours do and some of ours don't.
Yeah, I think 99% of referees nowadays do all the hard work. Noel, they do the age groups and they do everything else. So and we've got to, as you said, we agree to disagree. We've got to get away from this. In the old days, no more old days.
However, I remember very clearly Michael Hart and myself used to have a rule. We refereed 300 games a year, training and other games before we went overseas. So I'm not sure they're doing 300, but let's move on. Let's move on. Richard,
can I ask about from certainly a coach development pathway and players by extension of that, where do the CISAS or State Institute programs sit? Is there any scope for an AIS return? And can you give us, our audience, an explanation as to what's happened with WACE and QAS?
Yep. Okay. Look, that's a big question, Foxy, and there's probably an hour's worth of answers to try and get through all that. Okay. Where do I start? In terms of the AIS program specifically, basically the AIS have a bucket of money that they need to distribute across the teams, across the sports, and they have, you know, by their calculations, I think it's either 75% or 80% of the money that they need to fund all the sports that are currently supported. Okay, so going forward. They've only got 75 or 80%. I can't remember which it is. It's one of those figures to support all the sports going forward. They are becoming the methodology they are using, you know, in simple terms is, have you won medals in the last 3 Olympic cycles? So in the last, so post-Tokyo, it'll be Tokyo, Rio and London. Have you won medals in those Olympics? Are you likely to win a medal in Paris? And if the answer to no is no to any of those questions, your chances of getting funding are pretty low.
Absolutely.
Or your funding will take a significant cut. Now, the reality is our men's program, despite how well they're doing at the moment, despite them arguably being the most successful we've ever been over the last 4 years, have won a medal. And so when we try and argue and lobby and, you know, put our case forward about how well they're going, how they've won 2 quarterfinals in the last cycle, and, you know, the competition's tough, and going into any major event that, you know, 8 or 9 teams could potentially medal. The reality is the AIS turn around to us with a black and white list of paper and says, you've never won a medal in 100 plus years. So why are you going to win one now? So that's a real challenge for us, because that's how they're distributing the funding. And the women's program, obviously, you know, we've got to make sure that they are medalists going forward to maintain their funding. And, you know, you guys have been around the sport long enough, but you can see that a lot of the other nations are doing a hell of a lot more now in women's water polo as well. So it's getting increasingly competitive and difficult. And we're still in a good position. We beat the US earlier in the year, and we've got a really good group of girls together, and good staff and structures around them. And so, going into Tokyo, I'm confident that both teams can medal because they're both in really good position. So that's not a slide on our current teams. What I'm trying to explain is the rationale for funding allocations going forward is that's what it is. Now, where this gets complicated, and this hasn't happened previously, is that the NIN network, so for us, that's QAS, NSWIS and WACE, the NIN network are now aligning with the AIS's model. Now, previously, and Noel would know this, Foxy, you probably know this as well, previously they didn't align. The QAS had their own agenda. They wanted Queensland's on team. WACE had their own agenda. They wanted WA athletes on national teams, and NSWIS the same. Well, now they're all aligning, going, well, we're just going to invest in teams or sports or individuals that are going to win medals. That's not good for us.
Yep. No, it's not.
Right? So that's the situation that we're faced with at the moment. And we had, QAS, we had both programs funded through to June 30 next year. Then the new CEO comes in, and the first meeting I have with the new CEO after 2 weeks is her telling me that the men's program's been cut as of the end of the year. First meeting I had. 2 weeks earlier, we had an agreement through to June 30. So it was like, okay. And, literally she has the sheet of paper in front of her with all our results of the men's program over as many years as you like. And you haven't won a medal. So, sorry. That's reality.
So, Richard, does that sorry to cut you off, mate. Does that frustrate you? knowing what's going on? Yeah. That happens?
Did that not come across? No, look, it does. It's extremely frustrating. And I'm assuming that no one from the AIS watches the whistleblower, hopefully. So bear with me. But no, look, it is frustrating because I love sport. I love the value of sport. I love team sports. It's all I've ever been involved with. And, my argument at times with the AIS is, and I've had this argument for a long time, that these sort of entities, I'd love these entities to invest in sports that matter to the country. And the Kiwis did this many years ago. They narrowed that 7 or 8 sports that mattered to Kiwis. And if they had a freakish athlete in 1 or 2 sports, they sponsored them and supported them. But largely they stuck to the sports that mattered to New Zealanders. And, I look at what the AIS have done over the years with Winning Edge, etc. And it's all about medals, and it's still about medals. So if they can find a single athlete who's a freak and a great athlete, they invest in that athlete, they win a medal in a particular sport that maybe not many people compete in, but it's a medal, and they can take that back to the federal government and say, we've got another medal. Now, as you guys all know, being involved in team sports are much harder and much more expensive.
Yeah.
And if I was a 100-meter sprinter and I came 8th at the Olympics, I'd be a superstar. If I'm a water polo team and I come 8th at the Olympics, I'm probably a failure. And it frustrates me enormously, Danny.
Yep.
And we're also the leadership around the AIS and the NIN at the moment is quite. Their backgrounds are largely sort of scientific, very binary, black and white, numbers driven, performance driven, and that's not a crime. That's just the mix of people that are involved at the moment. So, trying to discuss the value that the team performance has on the rest of the sport is probably doesn't have the value that I think it maybe should in those forums. So, so look, that's a short answer. And look, WACE and NSWIS are pretty much the same, Foxy. That's heading down the same path. So that's where we're at. And so our challenge now is, okay, how do we run programs where we're not reliant on federal government funding? Because we might, we've got funding through to June 30, 2022. So that announcement recently bought us another 12 months, 12 months longer than I thought we had. We didn't expect to get that for the men's program. We thought we'd be okay with the women's program, but we didn't think we'd have it for the men's program. So it's bought us 12 months, which is good to get some things in place. But we have to set up, because in, you know, arguably in 5 years' time, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, I'll be surprised if we have a great deal of federal government funding. And so if we're going to be successful, it's going to be done through other ways.
So, Richard, a quick question here. As you know, in pistol shooting, we own our own buildings with our own money. So we're actually very fortunate. We're exactly where you want to be, where I wanted to be a CEO my whole life, actually. Right? How do you see water polo achieving away from the government? Because you're right, this team, and I'm being careful here because I know all those ex-players are going to ring me up and have a go at me. But this team may be the best team we've ever had. It may be. I mean, I personally think it is, and I apologise to all those great players of the past and coaches, but I think it's our best team. We could actually win a gold medal and still lose money because the way they're looking at it, which is a really strange situation, and the first time it's been like that with the AOS, really, in a long time. So how do we find a way to find the money without the government? I mean, there are lots of people in this sport who are rich. There are lots of people. I remember Moscow, when the government decided not giving any money, there was people selling sausages on the corners to raise money to get the team there. So it's been done before, but on a different level, of course. Yeah,
look, we're on that. You know, Charlie and I are talking every other day about this, and you know, we've got a lot of ideas, and I'm conscious of that we don't just put our hand out, because there are a lot of great people around the sport, and there's some money around the sport, which is a fortunate situation, but it's got to be something that's sustainable too. It can't just be something that we do for this year and then we're going around again next year doing the same thing. So, you know, we're looking at, you know, maybe setting up things like the Water Polo Foundation that becomes a much bigger piece that generates some ongoing revenue for us. You know, we need to try and get our commercial platform a little bit better. But the fact that we're a niche sport, really, you know, we're not going to compete with the NRLs and AFLs from a commercial point of view. But we've got quite a unique target market that if we can understand who our members are really well, we can pitch that to certain sponsors. So we need to do that really well. You know, I think we need to, you know, even some of the ideas we've been talking about to provide support to athletes and programs about how do we go to the private network of physios, S&C coaches around the country, and how do we engage them to be part of the water polo community and support not just our national teams, but maybe our national age group teams, AWL clubs. How do we build a network of practitioners who want to work in sport, and it's valuable to them as well, for their businesses, so we're not reliant on the NIN network, physios and S&C coaches. You know, pool access is obviously a big issue because that's one of the big advantages, particularly in the West and NSWIS. You know, getting access to SOPAC and HBF is very useful at the right rates. So yeah, look, I don't think there's not a short-term solution to that, Noel, but we need to diversify where it's coming in from. We need to try and set it up so that it's ongoing revenue, not just, you know, putting your hand out for donations.
Richard, we had
a lot of the talk that the commentary you're saying, it's about the elite. How important is the participation in terms of increasing our sport profile and maybe getting some people on board, sponsors on board?
Yeah, massive, Foxy. For me, you can't have one without the other. Your national team doesn't exist without having a really good base, and you don't have a good base unless you've got a national team that's got some profile and driving interest in the sport. So you need both parts. You know, so one of our challenges as a sport is we don't really have a clear picture on who all our members are because of, you know, the registration Rev Sport system is relatively new. It's still only a couple of years old, 3 years old now, and we're starting to get some pretty good data in there, but it's still not great. So trying to capture everyone in there so we know who our members are, so then we can take that to sponsors and say, look, we can reach this many people. And because it's not a massive number, we're not talking millions of people, our sponsors need to know that we can actually talk to these people and get to them with with material if that's the path we go down. And there's issues with that, and there's that's not all positive that approach, but that's one of the issues. Also with the Sport Australia core funding, it's dictated by participation numbers. So if the numbers that we present from our registration database are low, our core funding is low. If we compare ourselves to volleyball and basketball, our core funding is about 5% of our total funding, whereas those sports sit between 13 and 20%. So we're underrepresented in terms of that core funding because our data is not where it needs to be.
Richard, who's responsible to help Water Polo Australia find sponsorships?
Us.
So is it like the office, or is it? We had a Zoom meeting on the week, and we thought it might have been beyond the break. Are they involved in it as well, or it's just mainly the office itself?
Well, beyond the break are part of our office. They're the longest serving staff members we have. So,
what are they doing?
They work their backsides off.
Obviously, we don't see that, of course, but
I'm not sure how you don't see it because every piece of social media content that goes out comes out of Beyond the Break. Every video pack, all the stuff from Clash of the Champions on the weekend, that was all Beyond the Break.
Yep.
All of the sponsorship deals that we do have is all Beyond the Break. They're part of our staff. They're not an external contractor. So
are they continually working to look for sponsors?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And it's not an easy market at the moment. It's tough going at the moment. And look, it has been for a while. That's not just because of COVID. Sponsorship. Australia has got, someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think there's 49 professional sporting franchises in Australia. Now that's a higher density than any other place in the world. And so the sponsorship market in Australia is very tough. You guys that follow rugby league, Danny, you probably don't follow rugby league, but Ampol secured the State of Origin series this year for nothing. They didn't pay a cent for the State of Origin series this year. Now that's the most watched rugby league game in the country every year. They didn't pay a cent for it this year.
Good deal.
Richard, Danny.
Excellent deal. What happened to OVO?
What happened to OVO? So OVO changed their business model and split their business in half, and went to they sold off the phone part of the mobile phone part of their business, and were moving just into the OTT streaming platform, and wanted to basically their preferred model was a subscription model, Ian. So if we stayed with them, we probably would have had to put AWL behind a paywall and a subscription model. Now, you would argue that our community probably would have been happy to pay to watch AWL games, but by doing that, we weren't going to grow the game. So we made a decision to finish that one up 1 year ahead of the deal, and we'll try and get a new partner for that one. We've got a broadcast EOI out at the moment. It's closed at the moment, so we're reviewing it at the moment.
So, Richard, I can fully support that decision. I'll tell you why. Peter Hobday introduced a subscription model for the National Water Polo League that I'm sure Ian, Foxy, Danny will always remember, and there was 6 or 7 people watching. Yeah. It was a disaster.
If we need to get our game to new audiences, so we need to put it in front of people that aren't water polo people. That's the only way we're going to grow it and grow the awareness. So, some of you might have seen the live streaming through the News Limited platform. So up here in the Courier Mail, in the WA, they're doing the same thing. So that's going to people that aren't traditional water polo people. That's what we need to do, is to let people see the game.
Yep.
Okay,
Richard, how important are the schools' water polo programs for our growth and development?
Yeah, very important, Foxy. All of them are. A lot of the, particularly the schools that have pools. That's very, very important for us. In Queensland, it's going really well. I know the Canberra one's not too bad. Melbourne, we've got some challenges with a couple of the schools trying to around access to pools, and COVID hasn't helped that because the schools have sort of shut down from a safety perspective to external visitors. But in a broader strategy, Foxy, I think the schools are a big part of how we grow the game. And not every state will be able to do that because of the different structures, and not everyone, in Queensland there's a lot of schools have pools, that's not the same everywhere.
What about public schools, Richard? That's what's really dying. Private schools, not so much.
Yeah.
But CHS water polo around Australia, but particularly in New South Wales, it's gone through the floor, and we used to get some great players from there.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that's the school system in general, Ian, and I speak from reasonably close to that. My wife's a state school teacher, and it's just very, very challenging to fit sporting programs into the state schools. Really challenging because of the volume of other stuff they've got to try and fit in. But yeah, that's an issue. I think we're more chance of maybe in the regional areas trying to get that going again. But yeah, it's a challenge. You need a champion. You need a Foxy or you need a teacher in the school who's passionate about the sport, and away they go. To try and take it into a school where there's no one that's going to champion it for you, it is always going to be hard work.
So, Richard, one question, because I know Minnie's going to wind us up soon. He always does, right? So I'm jumping in before he shuts me up. Where do you see us in Paris 2024? Where would you like to see us, I should say?
On the dais.
Okay, I meant as a sport. That's a very good answer. That's probably how I would have answered it. Right. How do you see us as a sport by then?
In 2024, if I had to try and paint a picture, I'd say hopefully our women's program is still fully supported by the AIS and the NIN network. And we've got a fully functioning program through that, probably similar to what we have now. In terms of the men, I'd say that we've delivered a really successful program on a different model. And I can't tell you exactly what sort of model that's going to look like yet, but that we've almost adopted this real siege mentality to go, you know what, we're going to show you this is what we can do, and we're going to do it a different way. And and that we deliver a successful program that isn't based on federal government money or all federal government money. Probably a third. I want to be able to retain as much as we can.
Good work.
So, Richard, I just saw today actually that the AYC has been announced for the
age groups,
the various age groups.
Yeah,
and that would be great if we can get some national competition going. Is that the first national comp that we're looking at for 2021?
It will be. Yes. Yeah. Well, it is at the moment. Yes. So
what's happening with AWL?
Yeah, so we've got a meeting with the AWL clubs tomorrow night, and we'll hopefully have that finalised. So look out for an announcement later this week, hopefully, fingers crossed. We've got a new AWL committee, as you might be aware. That was appointed week before last. So we met with them last week. We had a good discussion. We've now collectively put a proposal to the AWL clubs for tomorrow night, and hopefully that'll get signed off, and then we'll be able to announce that towards the end of the week. So fingers crossed.
Any chance of live streaming the meeting?
Probably not. No.
That's right. We're running out of time here, Richard, but I've got a lot of questions in our Q&A box. What's happened to Alex Osterchuk?
Alex, yeah. So Alex is still working for us. So he finishes up his contract. He was on a fixed term contract through the end of this year. So Alex is continuing to work through to the end of the year for us. And unfortunately, obviously we've appointed Charles, so that's essentially the role that Alex was doing. So there's a couple of roles advertised at the moment. There's one at Water Polo New South Wales. There's one that we're co-funding with Water Polo Queensland as well. So I'd like to think that Alex would be in the mix for one of those roles. And hopefully, we certainly want to try and keep him in the sport. So short answer.
Yeah, he's a good bloke. Is Water Polo Australia investigating having a pool pools that are run by Water Polo Australia, or having partnerships similar to US Water Polo and their facility at Los Alamitos.
Okay, yeah, look, it's not something that we're talking about running at the moment. I don't think we're in a position to do that. You know, I think we need to be engaging with state and federal governments and other providers to try and make sure that we're part of conversations when pools are being built, like the one that, you know, potentially down at Cronulla that's coming up shortly. You know, we want to be part of those conversations and be involved in those sports. I don't think for us, unless we were going to move back to trying to run centralised programs, I don't think Water Polo Australia would want to be owning and running a facility, because we're a national body. I think at a state level, maybe, you know, the NRL don't own a rugby league field. The AFL don't own an AFL field or setup.
Yeah, they do. They do.
The clubs do.
Yeah, Etihad.
They own Docklands.
Oh, Docklands. Yeah.
But they're way ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. Well, Cricket Australia, they're saying Cricket Australia don't own any cricket grounds. You know,
True.
but the states do and the clubs do. That's, I think, where that's got to happen rather than at a Water Polo Australia level.
Got another
I think also we have to be a little bit careful there, because sometimes history repeats and we don't learn from it. Dicton's a great pool run by a water polo club. It's fantastic. But Hawthorn almost broke Victoria.
Yeah.
So we just got to, you know, sometimes we look at pools as the ultimate answer, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is.
Well, look where Victoria are now. Okay, got another one from the box. Is Australia taking part in the 16s World Championships?
Oh, they haven't been confirmed yet, so it's still a point of debate, that one. So that was, we were when it was on this year, 2020. We were planning to go, but we're considering that one at the moment.
Now, you've already half answered this one. It's from Fiona, who's a school teacher.
Yes.
Don't answer this. Just say we're going to get involved with them. School Sport Australia. That's where she wants you to be involved with, and that's combined high schools. So I'm sure that dialogue will happen.
Yeah, no, we've already had conversations with them earlier this year. There's not enough states that are interested in playing to get it recognised as a national championship. That was the reason it's not a national championship.
Got another one. Got great questions tonight. Going forward, would you like to see our national coaches more visible throughout the country with clinics and seminars?
Absolutely, 100%. And it's you'll see in the National Performance Framework that'll come out later this week, there's actually numbers of days written in there. So absolutely 100% our coaches will be out and about visiting states once they can travel.
What about visiting clubs?
Same for referees?
Well, all the referees are spread out around the country already.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like, have one specific person that goes to each state like a coach does. So we have a coach goes to each state, so we get the same program to all the referees, not someone getting something interpreted differently. You know,
Yeah.
so
You're looking for a job, Danny. I've got one advertised.
I'm too busy.
Mate, haven't you got your gold lifetime yet?
It's too expensive, mate. Don't you worry.
No, fair point, Danny. And look, we've advertised, and I was going to touch on it before, but we've advertised that role, the referee's role at the moment, which you'll all be aware of. Now, I could have quite easily just let Phil keep doing that role voluntarily and not paid him on, but I don't think that's a fair reflection of the value of that role. And it's not the money side of it. It's $25,000 is not going to change anyone's life too much. But all I'm trying to do there is reflect that the role of the referees is important, and we need to recognise that. And I'm sure Phil would have done the role for another 12 months for nothing. But,
well, Phil actually said he'd do it for nothing and give that money back to the referees of travel.
Okay. Well, that's recorded.
Talk to Phil about that.
I will.
So, Danny, are you on the interview committee? Because I think you've got a conflict of interest.
I think there's a conflict of interest in there. So,
100%.
Very good.
Hey, I've got questions coming out of my ears here, Richard, but you know what? Noel won't let it go any further because it's so late. I'm just looking at the clock. We're way over time.
Jeez.
It's been a really good question and answer session, and it's great to be able to get to know you a little bit and the way you're thinking, and we really appreciate your time for coming on to the Whistleblower. That's
all right. Happy to be on here. I was sort of waiting for my invitation. I was when Foxy rang.
It's all doing Phil. It's all Phil, mate.
It's all Phil.
It's all Phil.
But no, happy to be on here. Happy to be on here and have a chat. And happy to, even if you've got those questions, you want to flick them through, I'm happy to answer any of the other ones offline. I can send some responses to people. So, although they're probably anonymous, so I don't know who they are.
Yeah, most of them are, but they're not that tricky. I didn't think they were that tricky, but they are. No. Anyhow, it's been great talking to you, and we really do appreciate it, gentlemen. It's been great talking to you.
So, Ian.
Yeah.
And just 1 second. I think we should acknowledge, Richard's the first CEO who's come on something like this. Sure, it's a new technology, but he's been out there to answer the questions, and not necessarily that's always happened. Speaking from another sports point of view, it's not easy to do what he's done, and I think we should give him a lot of credit for it. I really do.
Well, there you go.
That's
Good
right,
job, Richard. You get another bouquet. Right.
And please don't tell anybody in Pistol.
A big bouquet for you as well. All right, guys. It's been great talking to you. I'm not really sure whether we've got one coming up in 2 weeks, such as our executive producer's lack of contact.
So, Ian, if I can talk to you for a sec, I've been talking to Phil. We have one guest who's an international person that we're trying to organise for a Christmas show. So let's wait and see.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. And you'll certainly hear about it on social media. Gentlemen and Richard, thank you once again for joining us on the Whistleblower. And it sounds like we're going to be there on Monday, the 21st of December. We will see you then.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
We're supposed to be.
Well done, Richard.